I am delighted to be here with you this afternoon. To me, the most important thing we can be talking about for our future is the future as it will be for those of you who are in college now and who are preparing for the rest of your life. We are facing in this nation and in this world the most unique situation that we have faced ever. And that is, as I alluded to before, there is so much instant, constant, and fluid change that it's hard to wrap our arms around that change. Well, the economists don't understand, in my opinion, that this change will never be bridled. It is a dynamic, constantly fluid, changing world that we are living in. Therefore, we can't use old economics to go forth because we don't know what forth means. Going forward, we don't really know what that means. So that's why a lot of these economists, they forget to say, but we're in a changing world. We've never before tried to figure out how we're going to employ the entire world. And that's where we are today. We're so interconnected. So that's just something for you to think about as you go forward. Well, Joseph Schumpeter, who was a great economist, said, there is something called the churn. And the churn really is that as old jobs or current jobs are disrupted, new jobs will evolve. Now, I do believe that the future will change billions of jobs. Billions of jobs for billions of people will go away. And we will be creating other jobs. But here's what's important for you to remember. We need to streamline our systems, and each of us needs to prepare for the skill sets for the jobs in demand tomorrow. So let me give you an example. Driverless cars. Now, driverless cars are going to take a lot of initiative beyond the fact that we have the automobile companies that are inventing them. We've got to have government approving them. And then once they're allowed to come on our roads, here's what will happen. Buses, taxis, trucks, limos, UPS, FedEx, Uber, all of those will transition into driverless vehicles. Well, what happens when that becomes the reality? We'll see a dwindling of parking lots, gas stations, fewer traffic cops, traffic courts, lawyers, insurance salespersons, because there will be fewer deaths and catastrophic injuries. We'll see fewer doctors and nurses being needed. New jobs will come from the technologies like drones and robots and engineers to continue the development and technicians to keep them operating. So the churn, this is a perfect example of how the churn will work. It will be totally disruptive, and it has been disruptive since the first computer went mainstream into the public, and it will continue to be disruptive. And as learners and people who are looking for wonderful employment in their future and things to do with our lives in the future, that's something we all must remember. We're going to look at some game-changing technologies, which include nanotechnology and biomedics and DNA and genetics and the Internet of Things and smart sensors and robotics and 3D manufacturing and drones. And of course, I have to give a little bit of attention to energy. Yes, it is freaky with this wireless technology. And you know, there's a churn to this wireless technology as well. And it's something that environmentalists are beginning to pay attention to. And that is the fact when the wires have gone underground or we don't even need the wires, we have fewer trees growing across this nation and across the world. Because birds were wonderful at planting seeds of trees. And now that they don't have the trees, the wires to land on, we'll have fewer trees. So see, everything has some kind of consequence that we don't think about. Some of the technologies that are leading the changes that we're going to talk about today, certainly the internet, nanotechnology, and information technology. Without these three technologies, much of what I'm going to tell you about could not be performed. Does everybody know about nanotechnology? We have a macro, a micro, and a nano. A human hair would be 75,000 nanometers. So that means that if you were just to pull out one strand of your hair and take a look at it, and imagine it being 75,000 times smaller than it is, that is a nanometer. And because it is so tiny, so small, so invisible to the naked eye, so many of our new technologies are using nanos because they're weaving them into carbon nanotubes to make our products. The Nanotechnology Center says that by the year 2015, 15% of the global manufacturing goods will include nanotechnology. 50% of new advanced technology products will incorporate nanotechnology. A half of our U.S. nanotechnology workers will fill nearly 2 million nanotech jobs. And 5 million nanotechnology jobs will generate millions of new jobs in the future. And turning new industries. Then we had the IT technologies. In 1992, you will see that communications sector really was the traditional communication, but all of that is converged. We now have digital technologies and broadband that have come together, and those industries have blurred our boundaries. And if you'll see here, we have broadband, phone and networks, content cable, operating systems with apps and search engines, broadband wireless networks, broadband cable with TV networks, and computers with smartphones and internet-ready TVs. Advanced information technology, which takes everything into digits, and communication, which is broadband, is driving the convergence and dynamic competition today. So along with that IT, we have abundant sensors. And when you look at the world population, in 2003, it was 6.3 billion people, and we had 500 million connected devices. But 2015, our population of the world is 7.2 billion people, and we have 25 billion connected devices. More than 50% of our internet connections are things. In 2011, there were more than 15 billion things on the web, with 50 billion plus intermittent connections. And by 2020, there'll be more than 30 billion connected things and more than 200 billion intermittent connections. Well, what does that mean? We keep hearing about the Internet of Things, where everything is connected. And as you see in this schematic, the humans are in the center, and we've got digital all around us. Everywhere we are, everywhere we go, it's digital. And I look right out in these incredible faces, and I see that you all are probably much more digitally connected than any generation that has come before you, because many of you were born with this technology as you arrived. Going forward, big data and actionable analytics will allow cloud-packaged analytics to accelerate and perform simulation on every action taken in business. Mobile devices will have access to the data, and there will be supporting business decision-making. So that cell phone that you now have that does all these incredible things is going to be the heartbeat of much of our future. By 2020, more than 50 billion devices will be connected to the internet. By 2030, virtually every item of value will become traceable because of smart dust sensors. Our next generational manufacturing will automatically embed smart dust particles with sensors and transmitters into everything we own. Whenever a purchase occurs, items over a certain dollar value will be assigned a personal ownership code, and we will be able to track that over our network. Sensors will be embedded in our clothing, our jewelry, our shoes. Our homes will be primarily used to detect everything from air quality to health, and they will also alert an owner when a theft has occurred. So everything will be smart and everything will be connected. And I say will be, but it is, ladies and gentlemen. It has already started. For instance, when you look at smart sensors, our products will be tailored to the customer and traceable throughout the service life. And then there will be real-time information flowing between the factory and the distribution center that give us our products. Plant operators will use information and knowledge based on applications to make decisions that optimize the product and minimize their costs. So that will be a smart factory with business systems and a smart grid that will include factory systems that take advantage of grid technology to optimize how much electricity they use. Smart interconnected systems will create agile factories that can respond to changes in products and customer demands. And we'll have a customer demand-driven supply of chain operates with higher product availability, and we'll have minimal inventories. So what we're saying is it's just going to be a smooth transaction of just-in-time delivery from what the customer wants to what the business can produce, and it's going to do it much less costly, and it's going to use much less energy. We already have smart transportation. It's already here, and it will be even more so because everything will be attached to all of our sensors. For instance, when you look over here at the far left corner, you'll see the little red vehicle. Well, that is a fire truck that's coming to assist someone in the car before it that's had some problems. But generally, when you put a fire truck on a road, what happens? It causes congestion in the roads. But these sensors in the future, and there are many cities that already have this, especially internationally, in young cities that are just being built, these sensors will come into our vehicles and our phones and tell them there's an ambulance, go down another street, without us even knowing, because guess what? We'll be in a lot of those driverless cars. So all of this is going to be communicating back and forth to help the traffic congestion, and all of this is going to be a money saver. So let's take a good look at this one. This is a schematic of the farmer, and he's out there and he's just sending those sensors out in the field. And the field consists of an apple orchard, and whenever those apples are ready to go to market at the exact right time to taste good when we get them in the grocery store, that apple tree is going to send a message to the farmer's computer, and it'll say, we're ripe, pick us today, pick us tomorrow, pick us this week, so that we can get to market on time. You know, in countries like Mexico, where kidnapping is a huge industry, we have a lot of young people that are now, they have sensor jewelry, and even some are implanted with sensors that have GPS to tell them where they are. Just like, how many of you have sensors in your pets? Absolutely, the hands are really going up back there. It's that kind of sensor. But converged systems, smart grids, geospatial, global information systems, global positioning systems, radio frequency information device, all of this is coming together to send messages and communicate with each other. Converged systems. Let's just imagine that as you're sitting here today, you get a text message from home, and it says, oh, the milk is gone. Pick up a gallon of milk on your way home, please. So you run into the grocery store, and when you take that milk off the counter, it's scanned, it's by a radio frequency information device that tells that grocery store and the supplier of that milk that you've just removed a gallon of milk. That message is already gone, and now the supplier is ready to send that gallon replacement to the grocery store. But you decide you're going to have burgers tonight. So you run through the grocery store and you pick up your bread and your meat and your cheese and your lettuce and tomato and your buns and your chips. And instead of stopping by the scanner or by the checkout stand, you just take that into a bag and walk right out the door. Because all of those products are being scanned automatically and sent to your bank saying, deposit $23.16 in the Walmart grocery store from your checking account because you're having burgers tonight. Well, you get home, you open your refrigerator, darn it, somebody left just one swallow of milk. You take it out, you put your new gallon in. Your refrigerator scans that gallon of milk and knows that on November the 13th, that milk is going to expire. You walk to the sink. You rinse that milk jug out and put it in the recycle bin, which is scanned by your city waste pickup. And it knows from the number of scans that have gone through that waste and is taken out to the trash how much recycling your home is doing. And those who are recycling are going to pay less than the citizens who aren't recycling. Because ultimately, for those who don't recycle, it's going to cost more money for landfill and things like that. So you're rewarded and your neighbor is punished. Well, the next time you're sitting here in a meeting on November 13th, or you're in the classroom, your phone will buzz you and it will say, "The milk expired today. Pick up another gallon." Let's take a look at the future of medicine and biotechnology. What you see up here in the upper left-hand corner happens to be an endoscope camera. And it's a little pill that you swallow if you've got an intestinal problem. It goes through your intestines. It takes 8 hours. It sends out 32,000 impulses to a little receptor that you're just carrying on your body. At the end of those 8 hours, you take it back to the doctor's office, and instead of having to cut you open, they are able to just take a look at that 32,000 images as they pass through your intestines. And when it reaches a point where there's something that's impacted or something, they're going to be able to say, here is where we need to focus our attention. Today we use the Da Vinci surgical system. It's a robotic system that the doctor runs from a robot, looking at a computer screen. The patient's a bit away from him, and he is running that robot to do that surgery. It's been in use for 14 years. They've done over 200,000 procedures a year. In fact, they were able to use the Da Vinci system. The first time they ever did it remotely was to do gallbladder surgery on a 92-year-old woman. The doctors were at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, and the patient was in Ireland. This will be the future of our surgeries, of our treatment. It will be more virtual. But instead of swallowing a tiny little pill that's about the size of the tip of your finger to go through your intestines, something new will be happening. And that will be doing surgery through a micro robot. So a university in Australia has developed this micro robot that's the width of 2 human hairs. It's guided by a remote control, transported via propulsion system based on E. coli bacteria and a built-in micrometer. It'll swim through our arteries and digestive system to detect disease. Now I gotta stop right there. Do you remember the commercial where the college professor is saying, "My career could not stop me, but a little piece of blockage from an artery flaked off and gave me a stroke"? Do y'all remember that commercial? It's been on forever. So a little piece of plaque that came off of an artery gave her a stroke, and we're talking about a micro robot that is going through your body and not doing danger. Don't you think that that's pretty amazing? Well, this little micro robot is also small enough to pass through the heart and other organs. As it moves through the body, it will be picking up a few cells and doing its own biopsy. It can go where catheters can't go and reach, such as inside the brain. It will treat patients using non-invasive or minimally invasive procedures. And it will deliver medical glue to the site of a damaged cranial artery. This is in your lifetime. So what we're talking about here is the use of genetics and regenerative medicine. So I'm going to show you a doctor that is already growing organs from human cells and tissue and using a three-dimensional printer to make new organs. So, genetics today, we've just seen how we're using our own stem cells. And we have to talk about, some of our genetically modified foods. Just a minute. We won't go into it, but today we can even determine if we want bulls or heifers if you're a farmer. And in the future, our genetically engineered animals and plants could be a major part of agriculture by creating livestock that grows faster and consumes less feed, and it produces less waste and yields leaner and healthier meat, or, and this is where the controversy comes in, it may even be lab-grown food, but it won't happen too soon. Let's look at what is really going to impact all of our lives, and that will be the robot. U.S. manufacturing is still a major industry, but it is changing so totally that we don't always recognize it. It's a $2 trillion U.S. economy. The workers' productivity has gone up 3.7% for the last 60 years, and yet we keep hearing that America has lost its manufacturing edge. But what we're doing is we're manufacturing high-value added product, and we're sending those low-value added products offshore to the countries that will pay their employees the least. And we're chasing from China to India to Vietnam, all over the world of low wage workers. They could be high skilled, low wage. But what we're seeing is a lot of the manufacturing is coming back to this country. But a lot of it is increasingly robotic. About 70% of our automotive factories are robotic. So let's take a look at one of our automotive factories. The robots will be doing a lot of this work, but we're going to be doing other things, because remember, in the churn, a lot of jobs go away and new ones replace them. My good friend and past president of Interlink, Glenn Wentridge, who many of you have heard speak, he works very closely with the Convergence Center. He says it isn't really the robots that are taking the jobs away. Robots are changing the way all of work will be performed, but it's the IT programming that drives the robots. So he says IT, information technology, and anything working within that, they're going to be the innovators that are telling the robots what they can do, and they're going to be setting those outer limits. So that's one kind of robot, the kind that comes in and builds cars. But there are other robots that are going to be impacting our lives dramatically. And this is a homegrown story. This robot comes from a company in Richardson, Texas. David Hansen, who is the owner, was a Richardson ISD graduate, went off to college and went to work for Disney. And as he studied the Disney characters, he realized that they were falling apart, the heat and the little kids climbing all over him and touching them. And he realized that something had to be done and could be done, and he had an idea on how to make a different kind of material that could last longer than the Disney characters that were being used. And so he went to Disney and they said, no, David, we're happy with what we're doing. So on a leap of faith, he opened his own company just to develop this material that would last longer. And so as he did that, he realized in order to make his material really sellable, he needed to make it to do with something like robots. So he built robots, and he said, robots can't just be staid things like R2-D2. They've got to be something that moves, because the future is going to be in robots that service, that help us. They're assisting robots. So he built robots that move like our face moves. And he put his fabric, his new material on the robot, and then he decided he didn't just want it to be a robot that looked like a human and could do certain things. He wanted it to have artificial intelligence. When you go on Hansen Robotics' site, you will find all sorts of different artificially intelligent, natural-looking robots. The little boy, David Hanson's son Zeno, has his own robot that reads and talks and interacts with children. They are especially using that child for young people that have attention deficit and other types of personality issues that need interaction. But he's a phenomenally successful roboticist, and he has the first robot that was ever placed at the Smithsonian University. So I highly recommend going on the Hanson Robotics site and looking at what they are doing, because they're looking at those assistance robots that will help the senior citizens and being able to interact. They're hoping to be able to use them in nursing homes with patients who have memory problems. So here we are with all of these different robots that we're able to use today and access, and companies are using them. We've got the Roomba vacuum cleaner, and then we have the robomotor that will mow up to 3 acres of land. We have a laundry folding robot, and we have a security robot that was really built for companies that have big campuses in secure areas like defense to go through, protect their parking lots and things. And then all of a sudden, builders started buying them to put in gated communities. Many of our hospitals are using robots to deliver the pharmaceuticals, or deliver things from one area of the hospital to another. So we don't always see them, but they are there. Roomba, the one that built the vacuum cleaner and the lawnmower, now have a gutter cleaning robot. And they're working on a window washing robot. Now, how many of us wouldn't like to have maybe any of those 4 items? And they are available. So you can just see they're getting us really used to having these robots. So here's the economics of a robot. Some jobs will come simply because there's more economic growth and we'll have more disposable income, and so we'll buy that lawnmower and that vacuum and that window washer. But who is going to be making the robots? They're going to be working in teams of study, and they are working in teams of study, because they have to understand the psychology. So statisticians, social sciences, joining with computer science and engineering. Anything that we can use our talents in to make something that will help others will be used with robots. Robot trainers. They're trying now in the industry to make robots that are friendlier to humans that are around them, so that we don't have these on-the-job accidents. And if you will look in these logistics centers, companies that are pickers and packers for the products we're ordering, many, and in the soon future, most, will have robots that are going through and doing the picking, and then the humans are doing the packing of that item to send to those of us who are ordering. Those are all robotics. So they have to train them to work on the same floor without the robots injuring us. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So they need those robotic trainers, and when they break down, those technicians to repair them. And Jeff Wacker, who is a highly respected futurist, even tells us that robots that are programmed the wrong way are rogue robots. And we need to have robot, and he calls them psychologists, to go back and figure out how they were miscoded and try to recover them rather than having to trash them. So there's going to be all sorts of new jobs coming down the pipe for working with robots. But some of those that can go away, or at least have fewer numbers needed, will be anyone who has a repetitive job of any kind. That's something that's going to happen over and over and over, as we saw in the automotive factory. Lawyers and paralegals, because when we think of a robot, we may think of a Jules, or we may think of that robot in the automotive, but robots are also data miners. They're able to find out information. They don't have to be a structured robot. So where before lawyers and paralegals were going through reading all of the past data of the law, now they'll have robots that are just gigabyting and looking through that information. Pharmacists. Now, I can't imagine that we will ever see a day that robots, or even, they talk about it in a moment on 3D printing, where we'll be able to print our own pills. I hardly doubt that. But they will be aids to the pharmacists, making us have fewer of them. clerical work, store clerks. Fishing bots will replace the fishermen. Mining bots will replace the miners. Ag bots will replace the farm workers. Inspection bots will do the inspection of our products rather than humans. And then warrior drones will reduce the number of warriors on the battlefield. That's a good thing. Another kind of robot. We don't talk about them in the frame of reference as a robot, but drones are also similar to robots. They just fly in the skies. And Congress is going to open the U.S. national airspace to drones by September of 2015. And I'm sure you've all Googled or seen something that's showing us how Amazon is planning on doing delivery of robots, and you can Google that and see it. But the FAA says that by the year 2020, there's going to be over 3,000 drones in our domestic airspace. So here are the jobs with drones. Emergency responders are going to be using them. First, to go in and see, is there any gas leak? Where's the danger? Police departments will be using them. We've got some drones that are the size of bees, and they can fly in all sorts of formations. So the police department can send a drone into a house and be able to say, okay, who's in there and what's going on with a search warrant. Border Patrol, we're already using that in the state of Texas. We're already using drones on our borders. Homeland Security will be using them in many, many different ways. In fact, Homeland Security is giving grants to the police departments to buy the drones. Agriculture, to be able to say how many trees are ready to pick and where are they and when do we plant, and all of these things drones will be looking at. Filmmakers, the latest James Bond film was made with some drones doing the overhead photography. Bureau of Land Management is beginning to see how we can manage our animals to keep them safe and our environment for our land. Surveyors. I just held a session with thought leaders from construction industry, and they tell us they're using drones to come into the buildings and to make sure they're laser straight and to make sure that the walls are placed right. And they're able to do this, like I said, with lasers and computers to say, have we got this structure built exactly right? It's going to be amazing for engineers. So the jobs that will be needed for drones are standard specialists, those that are making sure that, that the drones are doing what they need to be doing, where they need to be doing. There's got to be a lot of enforcement going on with the FAA and the government. Docking designers and engineers, because you can't just say, okay, Amazon, deliver my package this Christmas on this day. What if you live in a very small community that your houses are right next door to each other or attached? You got to make sure they come to the right place and safely. Environmental minimizers, making sure that the drones are safe from the environment and the environment's safe from the drones. Sound engineers, so that we make sure they're not too loud. And of course, air traffic controllers. So big opportunity. So I've saved the best till last, ladies and gentlemen, because I think this is going to be the most disruptive game changer that we have had since the computer has gone mainframe and we all got one. And it's three-dimensional printing, a rapid and reparative prototype. And literally, you will be able to print your own products tailored to your specifications. Today, we saw that it's being used for medicine, auto parts, physical structures, and automobiles. NASA is working with three-dimensional printers to be able to print the structure on Mars. It will be their habitat, their laboratory, and their other facilities. So they'll be doing a lot of that in three-dimensional printing. And then after three-dimensional comes four-dimensional, and MIT has now discovered a way to print a material so that it folds itself up and it opens itself back and it regenerates if it's broken. So where they're going to be using it is for places like our plumbing and our city sewer systems. And today, if one breaks, you have to send out the team, and they have a snake that crawls through it, not a real snake, but a tool snake that crawls through, and it finds where the backup is that's caused it to break or whatever it is. And then that will repair itself, so you don't have to have that team of workers out there. You see them in the middle of the night with tents around them and the lights going off. You won't have to do that. It will take care of itself. Also, buildings that will be repairing themselves. Here are some of the future jobs. We'll need material experts and design experts and organ agents for those three-dimensionally printed organs. We'll need product designers and stylists and prosthesis designers and automotive designers and construction designers. And they can use any kind of material, as we just saw: cells, metal, nylon, clay, wood, pulp, plastics, and other polymers. So it is totally unlimited as to how we will use three-dimensional printing. Now, I'll tell you one of the industries that's the most concerned: the logistics industry. When you dent the fender of your car someday, you might not have to go to the Ford house and say, oh, I need a technician to put a new fender on, and they ship it from the Ford house. They can either print it in-house, or guess what? You could go on the Google site, download the pattern, and you could ask for the material and print it out of your own home 3D or 4D printer. They're printing cars. Japan has printed 20 houses. They have a housing development of houses that have been printed on a 3D printer. So it is just amazing the things that are going to happen, and this will be a disruptive technology for all of us, but it's going to be incredible when we begin to see how this can really be used. Energy. Let us not get caught up in the fact that we're all going to have solar and wind energy that's going to help us out of our energy crisis. The fact of the matter is, as you'll see on this chart, up to the year 2030, we are still going to be using a lot of coal, a lot of oil, some nuclear, very little hydrogen, a little bit more of biomass, a tiny bit more of other renewables. So you can just see on this chart that we are still going to be very much attached to our coal and our oil and our gas for a long time. That is not to say we are continuing to try to get away from those sources that are causing the environment so much damage. It's just a fact of life that it's just difficult to do it. California is doing very well on solar. Arizona tried it, and they put in a lot of solar, and people couldn't buy it because they weren't getting a return on their investment. So what they're trying to do is put together smart grids nationally. So it's just all government regulations trying to push us there, as they should, but it's going to be very slow in coming, ladies and gentlemen. But that's not to say there will not be jobs in energy. The grid is going to require that we exchange anything that's old, including our wiring of our houses or the energy that goes into the wiring, and we're going to have to replace all that. So there are going to be many, many jobs out there for people who are replacing our old systems for the new, highly and much government required systems. My suggestion for a success of your future: I would love for you to accept that we do have a churning environment. You will have many different types of jobs in your lifetime. Those of us who are still in the workforce are going to continue, along with you younger people, to have different kinds of jobs in your life. So that means we all must be continuous learners forever. And I know some of you are going, oh, if I can just get my associate degree, I will never go back to college, ever. But that's not the way it works. Be an innovator. Think outside the box. Solve problems. Prepare to work for many different companies, because yes, you're going to have many different jobs, many different careers, but they won't all be for the same company. And perhaps, probably, someday you'll be an independent contractor. You will take your knowledge, your skill base, and you will work for companies on an ad-requested basis. You'll knock on the door of the hiring agency, perhaps a temporary agency, who has put out a call for people that have your knowledge and skill base, certification, license, degree. And you'll knock on their door and say, here, I have all these things you advertise for. And they'll hire you to do a job. Either a short-term, many short-term jobs turn out to last a long time, but you may not be working for the company. You'll be a subcontractor. Your knowledge of technology will equal your value to business. Because as you see, everything we've talked about today is technology. Show your employer that you are up for anything. Volunteer for everything. And work with great passion. Because your employers notice. Seemingly little things count. No misspelling on your resume. Be on time. Always. Stay off of Facebook and your cell phone at work. Employers notice. So I hope what we've talked about today will give you just a little bit of insight into the exciting world that we are going to be experiencing in the future, that some of these game changers and current technologies will give you an idea of where you want to go. I'm still looking at my next opportunity in the workforce, and I know that I have to continue on and be a lifelong learner. Thank you so much.